The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a deeply entrenched struggle with a long and painful history. Its roots can be traced back to the early 20th century, fueled by competing claims to the same land. The Zionist movement, aiming to establish a Jewish state in Palestine, gained momentum, while the indigenous Palestinian population sought self-determination. The 1947 UN partition plan, intended to create two states, one Jewish and one Arab, was accepted by Jewish leaders but rejected by Arab leaders, further escalating tensions. The subsequent 1948 Arab-Israeli war led to Israel's victory and the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, an event known as the Nakba, or catastrophe in Arabic. This displacement, coupled with the ongoing expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem, territories captured by Israel in the 1967 Six-Day War, has been a major point of contention. The Palestinian territories comprising the West Bank and Gaza Strip remain under Israeli control with limited autonomy. The status of Jerusalem, claimed by both sides as their capital, further complicates matters. Decades of conflict have resulted in countless casualties, widespread displacement, and a legacy of mistrust and animosity. The Oslo Accords, signed in the 1990s, offered a glimmer of hope for a peaceful resolution. These agreements aimed to establish a framework for a two-state solution, with Israel and an independent Palestinian state coexisting peacefully. However, the peace process stalled due to various factors, including continued settlement expansion, violence, and political instability. The failure to achieve a lasting peace has perpetuated a cycle of violence and despair, leaving both Israelis and Palestinians trapped in a seemingly intractable conflict. Recent years have witnessed a concerning escalation in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The situation in Gaza, a densely populated Palestinian enclave under Israeli blockade, remains dire. The blockade, imposed by Israel and Egypt since 2007, has severely restricted the movement of people and goods, crippling the Gazan economy and exacerbating humanitarian suffering. Outbreaks of violence, often triggered by rocket fire from Gaza into Israel and subsequent Israeli airstrikes, have resulted in civilian casualties on both sides, deepening the cycle of mistrust and animosity. Adding to the volatility, the Israeli government's recent judicial overhaul has sparked widespread protests and international concern. Critics argue that the overhaul, which aims to limit the power of the judiciary, undermines democracy and could exacerbate tensions with the Palestinians. The proposed changes have been met with fierce opposition from various segments of Israeli society, raising concerns about the future of Israeli democracy and the potential for further unrest. The international community has also expressed alarm, with some observers warning that the judicial overhaul could further complicate efforts to revive the stalled peace process. Moreover, the political landscape in both Israel and Palestine has become increasingly fragmented, making a negotiated solution even more elusive. The Palestinian Authority, which governs parts of the West Bank, faces internal divisions and struggles to maintain control. The rise of Hamas, an Islamist militant group that controls Gaza, further complicates the situation. Hamas's commitment to armed resistance against Israel and its rejection of Israel's right to exist have been major obstacles to peace. The absence of a unified Palestinian leadership capable of negotiating from a position of strength poses a significant challenge to resolving the conflict. The United States has long played a pivotal role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, acting as a mediator, a broker of peace agreements, and a key ally to Israel. The U.S. provides significant military and economic aid to Israel, reflecting its strategic interests in the region. However, the U.S.'s unwavering support for Israel, often perceived as biased by Palestinians and Arab states, has drawn criticism for hindering efforts to achieve a just and lasting peace. The U.S. has consistently vetoed UN Security Council resolutions critical of Israel, further fueling accusations of double standards. The Biden administration, while reaffirming its commitment to Israel's security, has also emphasized the need for a two-state solution and expressed concern over Israeli policies deemed detrimental to peace. The administration has resumed aid to the Palestinians, which was cut by the previous administration, and has called for restraint from both sides. However, concrete steps towards reviving the peace process remain elusive. The the U.S. faces the delicate task of balancing its alliance with Israel with its stated commitment to a two-state solution, a balancing act that has become increasingly challenging in the current climate. The U.S.'s domestic political landscape also complicates its role in the conflict. The pro-Israel lobby remains a powerful force in Washington, influencing U.S. policy towards the conflict. Public opinion in the U.S. is divided, with some segments expressing strong support for Israel, while others are increasingly critical of Israeli policies and sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. This internal divide makes it difficult for the U.S. to adopt a consistent and effective approach to the conflict. Section 4. Charting the future, a fork in the road. The future of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict hangs in the balance, with several possible outcomes, each carrying significant implications for the region and the world. The most optimistic scenario is a negotiated two-state solution with Israel and an independent Palestinian state coexisting peacefully within secure and recognized borders. This outcome would require significant compromises from both sides, including an end to settlement expansion, a resolution to the refugee issue, and a shared arrangement for Jerusalem. However, the current political climate and lack of trust make this scenario seem increasingly unlikely. Another possible outcome is the continuation of the status quo, with Israel maintaining control over the Palestinian territories and the conflict simmering indefinitely. This scenario would perpetuate the suffering of Palestinians, fuel instability in the region, and pose a constant threat to international peace and security. The international community would likely face mounting pressure to address the humanitarian crisis in the Palestinian territories and find ways to contain the conflict. However, without a fundamental shift in the dynamics of the conflict, a lasting solution would remain elusive. A more pessimistic scenario is a descent into further violence and chaos. The ongoing expansion of Israeli settlements, the potential for renewed conflict in Gaza, and the rise of extremism on both sides could ignite a wider conflagration. Such a scenario would have devastating consequences for Israelis and Palestinians alike, destabilize the region, and have global repercussions. The international community would be forced to intervene, but its ability to contain the violence and broker a solution would be severely tested. Section 5. A plea for humanity and balance. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not just a geopolitical dispute, it is a human tragedy. The conflict's devastating impact on the lives of ordinary Israelis and Palestinians cannot be overstated. Generations have grown up amidst violence, fear, and uncertainty. The human cost of this conflict demands our attention and compels us to seek a just and lasting peace. We must move beyond the rhetoric of blame and recognize the shared humanity of both Israelis and Palestinians. It is imperative that the international community, particularly the U.S., adopts a more balanced and even-handed approach to the conflict. Blind support for one side at the expense of the other only perpetuates the cycle of violence and mistrust. The U.S., as a key player in the region, has a moral and political responsibility to use its influence to push for a just and sustainable solution. This requires engaging with all parties in good faith, addressing the legitimate grievances of both sides, and holding all actors accountable for their actions. Ultimately, the path to peace lies in dialogue, compromise, and a shared commitment to peaceful coexistence. We must amplify the voices of moderation and reason both within Israel and Palestine, and support those working tirelessly to build bridges of understanding and reconciliation. The international community must provide the necessary political, economic, and humanitarian assistance to create the conditions for a just and lasting peace. The time for action is now. The future of Israelis and Palestinians, and indeed the stability of the entire region, hangs in the balance.